To the question of is there racism in Scotland, I feel yes, there is, 100%. I don't think um, racism will ever be eradicated from a lot of countries. Um, but I don't think racism is 100% derogatory. Um, as I've seen, compared to England as well, I think this year racism is a lot better in Scotland, considering like football, when obviously England missed the penalties against Italy in the Euro final. A lot of racism prevailed then towards the black community, whereas in Scotland you don't really see that.
Hi, my name is Mahad. I am 19 years old and I'm from Somalia. So today I'm going to be answering a couple questions. So, in my opinion, is there still a problem with racism in Scotland? I'd say yes. I think racism is still very prominent within the Scottish community. However, um, it's not as obvious as it used to be before. Just for example, like last year, it was around the time Hamza Yusuf had just been elected. I was coming back home from work very late. It was like 11 p.m. And it was Ramadan. I was fasting, I was kind of tired, didn't have the energy. And there was these elders like in the Scottish community that had just been provoked and triggered by Hamza Yusuf being elected. And they started off with the usual, oh, you're taking over our country, taking our jobs, and then they were calling me things like terrorist, calling me things like the P word, the N word. It just got very messy really quick, and then it started getting aggressive. And I was just sat there on the bus, and I was just waiting to see if anybody would say anything or stand up for me or anything. And everybody was just silent. I guess some people had headphones and stuff in, so they couldn't really hear the commotion. But there were a lot of people that were just sitting there, just watching. And I was like, it was the first time I'd felt uncomfortable in a long time. Like in school, yeah, racism was very prominent and I had to deal with that. But I just thought it had gotten better as we progressed further into, the future. But I think it's still very prominent and it's something that we need to work on because I do my part in the Scottish community. I do my labor. I do something and I contribute something to society. So just for me to be deemed as something less than, it was very hurtful, I'd say.
Whether it's been the pharmacy, the doctors, the hospitals, going on a bus, any of us, even when the council comes out and you need to speak to them, I've not had any issues whatsoever regarding my race. Same with the family members. I think we speak with purpose, and that's kind of how it is. If I go to doctors, I tell them what's my problem. They tell me how to fix it, and that's kind of it. There's not very. It's very straight to the point. We don't like there. It's not. I don't feel there's race comes into it. I don't think it does, and that's a big, big problem to racism in Scotland, especially now. Whether it be a family member or a friend, um, saying racist stuff or saying a racist remark, it will probably be indirect when they're saying it. It won't be directly to someone's face. So we kind of turn a blind eye to it and we just become desensitized to it because we think it's fine.
Do I think racism is challenged in Scotland? I'd say no, just by example. Last year when I was on that bus after Hamza Yusuf had been elected, when them elders were verbally attacking me and racially, abusing me, nobody had said anything. Everybody was just watching silently, and it made me think for a while. I was like, do they agree with what these elderly people are saying? Like, why is nobody standing up and condoning this behavior? Until later on, this lady that came on, she overheard what they were saying, and she was distressed by it. She was disgusted, and then she said something about it. She was like, you guys should be ashamed of yourselves. It's 2023. I don't know what makes you think that what you're saying is okay. And all those elderly people, just grouped up on her and started saying, you're a white woman. As a white woman, how could you side with him? How could you side with the terrorist? And it was a clear moment where, they were continuing to segregate us and them. Like segregation within the community has already been so prevalent since school. For example, in school, there was always that white group, that brown group, the black group. And then now it's like, as we're getting older and times are changing, it's not the 1960s or the 1920s, but they still want that segregation where it's like, oh yeah, whites are better, whites should be with whites. And it's like, how are we going to progress as a society if we can't work together?
I think, yeah, 100%. I think it's easier now for someone like me who's a third generation person who's born in Scotland, um, as like my parents are from here. It's like I'm kind of used. I would say I'm like I know about the culture, etc. that happens here. Whereas someone who is maybe a first generation who just came straight from Asia or Eastern Asia, somewhere Africa even, they might feel scared too because you're like, oh, they don't know how to go about things, etc. There's no really tips. But for me, I feel I'm perfectly fine using them.
So, is there more or less understanding of working sensitively with cultural differences? I'd say that it's subjective because different work environments are at different levels of trying to understand and accept, cultural differences and work sensitively with it. For example, like praying at work or something like that. There's a lot of places that, they'll try and make that accessible for you and try and, adjust things for you and give you breaks at certain times. Or for example, in Ramadan, if you're fasting, to give you that break. But a lot of places will just dismiss it and say, we don't want religious beliefs and all that stuff within our workspace, So I'd say it really depends on the situation. But in my case, I have been very lucky to have my cultural um, differences be accepted at work, and not be judged for it. And my religious beliefs also accepted at work, where I can pray, I can what do you call it, break my fast when it comes to its time and get a break.
Hi everyone, my name is Maliha Malik and I'm the mental health and advocacy worker at Urban Community Project, as well as in my day-to-day life I work as a mental health practitioner and I have a background in psychology. At Urban Community Project, we focus on supporting Black, Asian and ethnic minority communities. We offer various programs designed to improve mental health and skills within these communities. Through my work at UCPE, I've noticed a notable occurrence of mental health issues among young people today. After speaking to various young people, I've noted that traditional mental health services often fail to attract this group. From this information has led UCP to develop more creative approaches, for example, having an organised interactive workshop around mental health that young people find a lot more engaging. My experiences, particularly working in a high school through UCP, has highlighted the need for one-on-one support for young people, as they are hesitant to seek support through these traditional channels such as GP or their pastoral care teachers due to an intimidation or even cultural differences, feeling that those they are confiding in may not understand their religious or cultural background. Unfortunately, the reluctancy often leads to the silent suffering among these young people. This insight urges the importance of culturally sensitive services to address the mental health needs of today's youth. Through my work in the mental health field and the Black, Asian, and ethnic minority community, I feel that establishing mentorship that link young people with mentors who share similar backgrounds and experiences can significantly enhance the desire of BME youth to access mental health services, as through my experience I've noticed that young people feel easier to talk to those who come from a similar background and are at similar ages, as they feel like they're a lot more understanding from where they're coming from. Whereas speaking to those who are from a different background and maybe a lot older, they may see them as an authoritarian figure and may feel a lot more intimidated by this. So I feel that establishing mentorship can enhance the desire of young people wanting to seek support for their mental health.